The day the train pulled into the small station at Willow Creek, the late summer sun hung low and blazed across the endless plains, painting the dry grasses in a copper glow, and Clara Dawson sat stiffly on the worn wooden bench of the passenger car with her little girl Annie curled against her side, clutching her one-armed rag doll with fingers that trembled between sleep and fear. The rumble of the train and the whistle of its steam a strange lullaby that had carried them across miles of land. Away from the only home they had ever known, though Clara knew it had never truly been home, not after her husband had gone to the grave leaving her with debts, a child, and a reputation too fragile to withstand the pitying stares of neighbors. She had answered the advertisement in the newspaper because she had no choice. Because somewhere far from the gossip and the emptiness there had been a man named Luke Callahan who had scrawled his need in steady letters: housekeeper wanted, honest woman. Strong hands, willing heart, and Clara, in her own neat script, had written back offering her skills, cooking, mending, sewing, tending livestock if necessary, but had not dared to confess that she would be bringing a child, fearing that truth might slam the door shut before it had even opened, for she had seen too often how men in need of help balked at the sight of a child, a mouth to feed, a presence that complicated the neat arrangement of labor and wages. But when the reply had come, firm and brief, "Come on the last train of August. You'll find me waiting at Willow Creek." She had gathered her courage, packed their meager belongings, and prayed that this one chance might bloom into a future. Now as the train slowed, the hiss of brakes cutting through the hot air, Clara's heart thudded like a trapped bird, and Annie's eyes widened as she pressed closer, whispering, "Mama, are we here?" And Clara nodded though her throat was tight, whispering back, "Yes, darling, we are here, and everything will be all right," though she herself was not certain of anything at all. When they stepped down onto the wooden platform, the dust of the plains swirling around them, Clara lifted her gaze and saw him waiting, a tall figure in a weathered hat, his shoulders broad under a faded blue shirt, his stance easy but solid, the kind of stance that told of years on horseback and days spent under a sky that offered no shelter but demanded endurance. And when his eyes found hers she felt an unexpected jolt, as though the earth itself had recognized him before she did. Luke Callahan was not a young man, but neither was he old, his hair dark with the faintest touch of gray at the temples, his jaw square and sun-browned, his eyes steady as they scanned her and then settled with quiet intensity. And though Clara braced herself for the flicker of disappointment she had seen in other men's eyes when they realized she was not some spry girl but a woman worn by life's burdens, she saw instead something she could not name, curiosity perhaps, or a patience that came from long solitude. He stepped forward and tipped his hat politely, his voice low and even as he asked, "Mrs. Dawson?" And she found her voice trembling as she answered, "Yes, and this is my daughter, Annie." And at that moment, as Annie peeked from behind her skirts, Clara thought she might lose her breath, certain he would turn away, that he would say this was not part of the bargain, but instead Luke crouched down on one knee, his broad frame lowering with surprising gentleness, and he smiled at the little girl as though she were not a burden but a person worth knowing, saying softly, "Well now, aren't you a brave little lady to have traveled so far?" And Annie, shy and clutching her doll, whispered, "This is Rose," holding up the ragged doll as if it might protect her, and Luke nodded solemnly, as though greeting an equal, "Pleased to meet you, Rose, and pleased to meet you, Annie." And in that simple exchange something inside Clara loosened, something that had been wound so tight it hurt, and though she kept her face composed she felt relief course through her like cool water after a long thirst. Luke straightened then, his eyes meeting hers again, and without another word he reached for her suitcases, lifting them as though they weighed nothing, his movements efficient and without complaint. And then, seeing Annie's short legs struggling to keep pace as they started down the platform, he paused, leaned down, and with a question in his eyes asked gently, "Would it be all right if I carried her?" And Clara, startled, hesitated, torn between the instinct to shield her child and the knowledge that Annie's small body was weary from days of travel. But Annie herself made the decision, reaching toward him with trust born of exhaustion, and Luke scooped her up with an ease that made Clara's heart clench, Annie settling against his chest as if she had always belonged there, her doll squished between them. And it was then that Luke, glancing at Clara with that same steady gaze, spoke words she had not expected, words that would echo in her heart for days to come. "I've got room in my life for all of you," he said quietly, his voice carrying more than just courtesy, it carried promise. it carried acceptance, it carried a strength Clara had not known she needed until it was offered, and she felt tears sting her eyes though she blinked them away quickly, not wishing to appear weak. Together they stepped off the platform, the station fading behind them, the horizon wide and blazing with possibility, and Clara walked beside him thinking of all the miles that had led her to this moment, of all the nights she had whispered to Annie that somewhere there was a place for them, and wondering if perhaps, against all odds, they had just found it.